But when it comes to something as life and death important as to what to feed yourself and your family, I want to get at the truth.
Britain is too fat and is getting fatter.
People are clueless. I'm doing this because I'm a physician and I care about people and I want people to live long, healthy lives. I'm an advocate of an evidence-based diet, and that just so happens to be a plant-based diet. So it's the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease, #1 killer here in the UK. If you refuse to improve your diet and lifestyle, you're going to have that disease for the rest of your life. That's why you have to take those drugs every day for the rest of your life. If you actually want to treat the cause, not only can you get rid of the disease, period, but it actually works better. But of course, where's the money in that?
Researchers say it's particularly alarming in the developing world, where people are choosing to spend their increasing disposable income on fatty, sugary foods.
There's this corrupting commercial influence in science in general, medicine and nutrition particularly. The system is just not set up to reward healthy behaviors. And unfortunately, what's most profitable happens to be what's least healthy.
It's a highly competitive, highly secretive industry with one goal: food that is simply irresistible.
They just try to kind of inspire people to fit some of the healthiest of healthy foods in their daily diets. That's what keeps me going, is how many people who, if they knew it, would change. So all we need to do, open up the mind and have people try it. And what's going to keep me in this for the long run, eating as many whole plant foods as possible. And that's when I retire. When I retire, it's not when everyone's eating healthy. Everybody's just informed.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Michael Greger is back on London Real, and if you remember him from the previous visit, he is a big fan of a plant-based diet, and his book, called How Not to Die, outlines how the top 15 leading causes of death can be minimized by eating a whole food plant-based diet. Now, as you know, last year when I ran my Ironman race and made the movie Iron Mind, I went completely plant-based. And so I love having these discussions, but I also love challenging Dr. Greger on some of his assumptions. And that's what I did during this show. He also has a brand new book called How Not to Diet that's coming out and talks all about the food choices we make. And he's a technical advisor for the brand new documentary film, The Game Changers. And again, we went back and forth about some of the science and pseudoscience involved in that film. And look, I love a healthy debate. I'm no longer completely plant-based, but I do see a lot of the benefits of eating whole foods and plants. Let the discussion continue. One thing is for certain, I love Michael's energy and his dedication to this entire field, and I know you're going to enjoy this incredible episode with Dr. Michael Greger. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Michael Greger, the American physician, author, and professional speaker on public health issues, particularly the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. You've appeared in numerous documentary films, including What the Health, Eating You Alive, and most recently as scientific advisor on The Game Changers. Your 2015 book, How Not to Die, is a New York Times bestseller, and your upcoming book, How Not to Diet, explores cutting-edge science behind long-term weight loss. Dr. Greger, welcome back to London Real.
So happy to be back. And the next book, a future New York Times bestseller. #1, that's my goal, I'm hoping.
I mean, it would be stupid to bet against you. I mean, last time you were here, I think How Not to Die had just come out, or it was fairly recent, right? About 2.5 years ago. And it did pretty good, right?
Amazing. So 33 languages now. Sold around the world. We're at about 750,000 copies.
Wow.
23rd printing, something like that. Yeah, really amazing.
Why is it so popular?
The title helps, I think. I mean, it's kind of catchy
Title helps, but titles don't sell books.
Right. No, but just to get people interested.
Yeah.
And then they realize, it's just a very simple kind of look. The first half of the book, right? 15 chapters, each of the 15 leading causes of death. Talk about the role of diet, may play in preventing, arresting, reversing each of our top 15 killers. So bang, bang, bang. Got someone with, someone just diagnosed with breast cancer, go straight to the chapter. It's kind of this modular.
Right.
Straight to the diabetes chapter, straight to the Alzheimer's, And then second half of the book really centered around, that was the why, and then the how-to. I wanted to make a practical guide, not just kind of a reference book with the thousands of citations, but wanted, day-to-day grocery store type decisions. Centers around my, daily dozen checklist of all the things I encourage people to fit into their daily routine. So, greens every day, the healthiest vegetables; berries every day, the healthiest fruits; tablespoon of ground flaxseed, quarter teaspoon turmeric, the best beverages, best sweeteners, how much exercise to get every day. Really just trying to kind of inspire people to fit some of the healthiest of healthy foods into their daily diets.
Yeah, and I was telling you, one of our very first hires here, his mom, watched your episode, and she went really big on the whole thing. It really changed your life.
That's the way to do it. That's why I do it.
I'm sure you hear thousands of those stories.
I love it. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
Is, I go back to the same cities, year after year, and you get those stories of not just individuals, but entire families, right? Revolutionizing their health, and just, and so nothing, and just people, crying all of a sudden, their diabetes is gone. They're going to see their grandkids grow up. That's why I do. So, most of my life is actually not in the public eye. So that's one out of every 3 years. I'm on a kind of 3-year book cycle. Where one, I'm out on the road full time. But the other two is I'm working on the next book. Right?
Yeah.
And that's all hunkered down in the basement library with no human contacts, me and my laptop screen. And it's what keeps me going day after day, those long hours, it's those stories in the back of my mind, right? Echoing in the back of my mind. And those images, I see their faces,
Because I've heard writing a book is the loneliest thing to do.
Oh, well, yeah. And I'm all in. When I get into book writing mode, everything gets shut out.
Why is that?
Well, it has to be. You have to immerse yourself. It's like, learning a new language or something. So for this obesity book, for example, How Not to Diet, there's 500,000 papers written in the peer-reviewed scientific literature in the English language on obesity, right? With 100 new ones every day. So, every hour, I'm a couple, go to sleep, forget about it. You're way behind, right? So even people in the field can't keep up with beyond their own little narrow, subspecialized domain, right?
Yeah.
And so and it's a really conflicted literature. So simple research questions like, should you ideally eat before or after you exercise? Or should you, should you skip breakfast or not in terms of weight loss? And it turns into 1,000-article research projects. So that's a book-length research for one little teeny question. Some studies say one thing, some studies say the other. You have to look at each study, read the primary literature, and say, wait a second, why did this study have a different outcome than this? What's the difference in their patient populations, the difference in their interventions? And so you can't get a phone call in the middle of that, right? You need to just complete, and then that's when the synthesis happens. That's when, wait a second, could that one disparate little thing I learned in that article written in the 50s have something to do with this article here? And then you bring it all together, right? And I read literature chronologically, always start with the oldest, right? So I can kind of get my heads into the research, just so it's like a detective story for me. I don't want to read the recent review and get swayed by whatever some contemporary reviewer's thinking about it. I want to read the original literature, the primary literature, and I want to go through it as the researchers did, plotting what's the next research question. Are they going to get answered? Are they going to remain unanswered? And so every little research question is this whole kind of historical deep dive. And you can't, if you get interrupted, it takes you a while to kind of get back into that. And so then things start to make sense. Then the connections start to come. Otherwise, it's just another kind of superficial review that anyone could do.
Yeah, you don't want to write that book, do you?
So it's like a review of reviews. Okay, if you're writing a term paper or something, all right, you get the most recent meta-analyses, most recent systematic reviews, and you just say, okay, this is what the literature says. No, this is what these bunch of reviewers say the literature says, right? But when it comes to something as life and death important as to what to feed yourself and your family, I want to get at the truth. And as far as I could tell, this hadn't been done in the obesity arena. And so the harder it became, the more I realized how valuable the project was. Because, I mean, there's just no way, like a practicing physician could delve this deep. Yeah. And then, someone off the street, I mean, it's just completely, there's no way they could keep up.
Did you ever think you're bitten off more than you could chew?
Oh, yes. And in fact, I realized that after I started working on it. I mean, so I did it the absolute wrong way. I said, oh, look, I'm going to give myself a year to write the book. Like, I just couldn't just stand the thought psychologically.
You had this book planned a while ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
You always
I knew this
like
was coming.
5 or 6 years in the future.
So I've got, I think I've got like the next 4 books planned out.
Right.
So that's
the last time you were
here,
so. You had already talked about How Not to Diet and then How Not to Age.
Yeah, that's the next one, 2022, right?
And you still got other books already planned after that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm always, the research is always pouring in. I'm already doing it just to get videos up on the website. But it's the deep dive that happens. So I gave myself a year, and then I realized how much the literature was. And I said, wait a second, I can't do it in a year. I mean, there's no way. I mean, you could just parse it out. I can read, it takes me this long to read a study on average. It takes me this long to annotate it. It takes me this long. There's just not that many hours. And so even though I have this whole research team now, right, where I have 14 people churning through studies, I got people that will pull articles from any library in the world, basically.
Right. And you're also publishing daily on your website,
well,
right?
So that's the 3rd year. So 1 year I write the book. 1 year I go around the world speaking about the book. And that 3rd year is I script out 3 years worth of videos for Nutrition Facts.
3
so
years.
Little people know, right? So some video comes up, today's video. So people come up to me all the time. I love this morning's video. I'm like, what's this morning's video? Like, I don't even, because I may have scripted that video a year ago, and I just have to pray that broccoli's still good for you, that it's not outdated by the time that because there's no way I can do it all together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the How Not to Die concluded pretty much that plant-based is the way to not die from those 15 different ailments, right?
I mean, it's the best thing we can do in terms of, so it's the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease, #1 killer here in the UK, and in much of the Western world. Right. Only diet ever to reverse our #1 killer in the majority of patients. No other diet. So, I mean, if that's all a plant-based diet could do, then, I mean, reverse our #1 killer. Shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? So that's really where I ended that book. And the fact that it can also be so effective in prevent, arrest, and reverse other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. I mean, it would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming.
Right.
And so that's really where it left.
And the top 5 in that book were, like you said, diabetes, heart disease. What were some of the other?
No, so number one heart disease, #2 cancer, right? And then depending on country we're going to, there's stroke, Alzheimer's, now up to actually 3, not for premature death, but for death overall here in the UK. Okay. Alzheimer's skyrocketed.
Yeah, we need to talk about that today. Okay.
I mean, so yeah.
So you came to the conclusion of that book, and it's like, all right, plant-based for all this stuff. Now you go into this book, How Not to Diet. How do you remain agnostic while you're pouring through all the research and think, okay, I'm trying to find the best stuff,
right?
But you just wrote a book that said plants are the best stuff.
Right.
So how do you do that? And you've gone on record to say that nobody should ask you what to eat. They should understand it themselves, right? They should make the decisions themselves.
Well, I mean, when they ask me, right. So certainly, but I don't even want them to ask my opinion. I don't have opinions. I mean, all I can say is I can show you what the science shows, right? Like, what do you think about this? What do you mean I think about this? Who cares what I think about this? Who cares what I eat? Who cares what? It's what does the science show, right? It's your body, your choice. You want to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, go bungee jumping? It's your body, your choice. But as a physician, all I can do is share with you, based on knowledge and experience, people in your situation who continue to do X, Y, and Z, here are the predictable consequences of your actions. And then it's up to you. right? That's informed consent. That's all I care about.
And that's important because, look, I spent a year plant-based last year doing my Ironman race. We made a movie about it, and it was great. But I also understood there's a lot of people get caught up emotionally in the movement. There's also the vegan movement, which I know you don't call yourself a vegan because you're like, I'm plant-based. Vegan tells you, I think you told me last time, what not to eat.
Right.
And what not to wear and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I've seen kind of a cult go around it, and sometimes people get very emotional, and that way it's not scientific anymore. And that's a little frustrating about the movement.
There's a religiosity, right? There's this kind of...
How does that make you feel?
There's a zealotry involved. And the downside, and anybody, you come across something and you make this important realization. There's this natural urge to like, wow, I didn't realize this, and you wanted to go preach out and tell everybody about it, especially the people that you love, the people you care about. You want to go out and be like, wait a second, do you know that you don't have to die from heart disease? You don't have to, you can reverse your diabetes. Of course, you're going to have that passion, especially for those who's closest for you, that you want around for a little while, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of preachiness, no one wants to be told, what to do, particularly what to eat. Very personal decision.
Very personal, right?
It's tied into family and culture and absolutely.
In America, it seems like you don't tell in America, just
hands
food
up,
is almost like
don't
should be one of the amendments, right? My right to bear arms and right to eat what I want.
Right. Apple pies in our veins.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
You're like you try to then stick really to the science.
So it's all about the science, right? And so open at all times for any argument. So people, as you open in the bio, he's an advocate of a plant-based diet. I'm an advocate of an evidence-based diet, and that just so happens to be a plant-based diet. But that my loyalty is to the science. My loyalty is not to any particular finding.
Okay. What if there was 100 studies that were published tomorrow with a billion sample size that said red meat was the best diet going forward?
Then I'd tell people to eat steak. I tell people to eat steak.
I appreciate that about you.
Well, no. No. But that's just, you got to follow the science, right? It's like if smoking all of a sudden is going to extend my life. I don't like the stuff, but and look, I may choose not to smoke, but I tell people, we're wrong. Go out there and smoke if you want to live long.
Okay. All right, so you go in to do this How Not to Diet. What were some of the big things that started materializing as you're gelling and getting all this stuff? And again, you're underground, literally and figuratively. And I know because I knew we reached out to you last year to actually do a Skype call for our documentary, and you said no, and it hurt my feelings, but I thought he's writing another big book. And people should also know that you donate the profits of your book to charity. That's a big deal.
No.
That's a lot of money for your last book.
Well, no, but it's so important from so many reasons. It was, Nathan Pritikin saving my grandmother. I want to do for everyone's family what, Pritikin did for my family. That's really what the motivation is. Yet there's this corrupting commercial influence in science in general, medicine and nutrition particularly, is, I didn't want to just get lumped in. So even if you're not selling some brand of snake oil supplements or foods, the fact that you're selling your book, you're selling your, then I didn't want to get, you're only telling people to eat X, Y, and Z because you want to sell a book telling people this X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to have that conflict of, even that perceived conflict of interest. So it's like, I'm doing this because I'm a physician and I care about people and I want people to live long, healthy lives, period, full stop. And that was very important to me.
Where does that money go?
So it's all, I don't even see, it's not that I donated to charity, it's in the book contract that it never comes to me, period. And so it goes to a donor advised fund and then, whatever, and then can go to any 501c3.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of limited to U.S. nonprofits, but often you can find kind of U.S. affiliates elsewhere if you want to donate money around the world.
And there must be a chunk of change if you're selling 750,000 copies of books.
Even the advance for the new book, it was $1.5 million.
And it goes into charity.
Yeah, all charity.
It's crazy.
And then the royalties too. everything. Every penny.
It's a lot of money. You mentioned Nathan and your grandmother. Can we tell that story really quickly? Just to give people some context. Because it's important for them to know that there is a personal side of you that motivates you. It's not.
Well, this is how I came up. I would like to think, well, I'm just a scientist and I just found the science, right? But what drew me to even look into this was the story of my grandmother growing up. My dad's mom who, I was just a kid when she was sent home in a wheelchair with end-stage heart disease to die.
Wow. Where'd you grow up and what year was this?
So this is in the 70s.
Okay.
I was like 9 years old. She was living in Miami, and her life was over. She already had so many bypass surgeries. She basically run out of plumbing at some point. You get so scarred up inside, you can't even go back in. And so there's nothing more the medical profession would do, send her home to die, age 65, right? And then on 60 Minutes, there was a story about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, who was starting this new clinic up in California, claiming he could reverse heart disease with diet, which the fact that heart disease reversal, period, was thought impossible. I mean, just thought you get worse, and you die. Like most people think of diabetes today. You get worse, and you die. And then he came out and said, no, we can actually reverse heart disease, open up arteries without drugs, without surgery. Come to my clinic, I'll show you how to do it.
And this is 70s, 80s when he said
70s,
this.
late 70s.
Late 70s,
yeah.
okay.
Started to open the clinic. And so my grandma...
60 Minutes, by the way, so people know, that was the only way you could hear about things back then. I mean, that was kind of the internet. That and Oprah.
Right. That was the big, right.
Especially for new ideas.
New ideas.
You wouldn't hear that on the news.
And so somehow she made the cross-country trek in her condition to become one of his first patients. She's actually featured in Pritikin's biography called The Man Who Heals America's Heart. Talks about Francis GREGER, describing her as one of the death's door people, where, they wheeled her in and she walked out. In fact, within 3 weeks, she was walking 10 miles a day. She was given
3 weeks.
3 weeks. It was a graded exercise program along with plant-based diet. And she, because although it may take months for the actual plaque to open up, you can get an immediate improvement in the function, arterial function, even though the arterial structure improvement can take months. Okay. But within weeks, you can get 80-90% of angina gone. That crushing fast. Chest pain. That fast, meaning that could have happened a year before, 10 years before, it never happened to happen in the first place. Like your body wanted to be healthy, but you were stabbing it with a fork 3 times a day. And all you had to do is just stop the re-injuring, and your body can heal on itself.
Right? Does it happen to anyone, or is it specific people have that reaction, or will most people have
most people. Most people. Okay. So Ornish's work showed that about 80% of people actually get that clinical reversal, and the earlier you can catch it, the better. But one of the things about medical training I learned that I think was one of the most kind of hopeful signs was that within 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker. Isn't that amazing? Your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you never started smoking at all. Yeah. And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starts to wham, first cigarette of the day, re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite. When all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is just stand back, stop re-damaging ourselves, and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health. Right? Yeah. The human body is like a self-healing machine. We just have to stand back and let our body work its magic. Right?
Yeah, I've done that a bit with cigarettes, with alcohol, and then last year with plant-based. And yeah, it is amazing.
Amazing.
It's interesting. My grandparents were cattle farmers, just like actually Dr. Neil Barnard's as well. So I watched my grandparents, go through that business, and then the diet that a lot of times just goes with that business as well. And they died of things that now I always wonder if it was presentable. Heart disease and stroke, and then more heart disease, complications from putting stents in, and it always makes me wonder, if they had other options. I don't know. I mean, but we didn't know back then, but now we do. And we've known since Ornish's first randomized controlled trial in 1990, July 21st, 1990. So for decades, we've known this. Yet in the States, hundreds of thousands of Americans continue to die needlessly from this preventable, arrestable, reversible condition. Right. And even when you're in the hospital for those diseases, they're feeding you the food.
Unbelievable.
I can't get you started about hospital food.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I was just scripting a video on hospital food, and actually most of the research on there is from the NHS. Really? And it's not just the patients, but the staff too are living, out of the vending machines, right? And actually, I mean, they used to sell cigarettes in the gift stores of hospitals, yet The medical profession actually led the charge to eliminate cigarettes out of hospitals. And actually the first kind of occupational setting that eliminated smoking was the hospitals. And so it would be nice to see them take that same kind of initiative and get the junk out of the hospital. So for example, in California, you're not allowed to sell soda in vending machines in public schools. Yet you go to the pediatric hospital, and you can get all the soda you want. In fact, they may have McDonald's or Krispy Kreme right in the actual hospital. Wow. And it's just like, what message are we sending when the bacon and eggs, you just had your chest cracked open, and that's what you get the next morning? I mean, it's the message we're sending.
Right, so that'll be one of your projects in the future, or you're constantly making videos about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you saw your grandma go through that, and that inspired you. You weren't a doctor yet.
Well, no. Oh my God. Right. So 9 years old. And in fact, back then, it didn't even occur to me. Right? Because for me, for the little kid, it was like, oh yeah, that's what happens. You get sick, you go to the doctor, you get better. Right? Little did we know that was this just near miraculous event back then, where we didn't even think heart disease was reversible, period. And it actually wasn't until Ornish was able to show with some called the quantitative angiography, where you actually inject a dye, actually see what's happening inside the arteries. All Pritikin had were clinical reversals, meaning someone can't walk, someone can't, chest pain or calf pain, and then all of a sudden start eating healthy and they feel so much better. And the skeptics are like, well, yeah, it was like placebo effect or whatever. Right. Until we can actually see what was happening inside the artery. So that's what Ornish added, actually being able to prove it there in black and white, see these angiography pictures of the arteries opening back up without the surgery, without the drugs, as if you just put a stent in there, but it was like a stent made out of broccoli. That's what opened that thing up.
And yet you could walk around and ask the average American today how they could save their grandma or their dad from heart disease, and they would not believe a plant-based diet.
They would just say, well, it's in my family. Well, yeah, you know what else is in your family? A lousy diet. that's what falls in. But so for most these chronic lifestyle diseases, about 80%, are completely preventable, arrestable, reversible. These are diseases no one has to die from. So that's most of what comes into a GP's office is diseases that could be reversed if the GP had the knowledge and could convey that to the patients in a way that would convince them to eat healthier.
But what they usually do is write a script, right? And then they put you on a medication.
Right. Which treats the symptoms, right? So, the symptom of having high blood pressures, that's a symptom of having diabetes. So you can control the symptoms. So high blood pressure, that's a symptom of disease, stiffened, crippled arteries. And so, yeah, you can artificially bring the blood pressure down. And look, if you refuse to improve your diet and lifestyle, well then, yeah, having lower blood pressure reduces your risk of stroke and kidney failure, etc. But you're going to have that disease for the rest of your life. That's why you have to take those drugs every day for the rest of your life. If you actually want to treat the cause, not only can you get rid of the disease, period, but it actually works better, right, than just trying to deal with the symptoms. But of course, where's the money in that?
So is that ignorance of the doctors, or is there a financial incentive, or sometimes it's hard to tell?
It's the system. The system is just not set up to reward healthy behaviors. Doctors in the States aren't reimbursed for counseling patients on eating a healthier diet. Right. And here, if you have 10 minutes with a patient, yeah, you can write a script, but can you really, talk to them about, what's in their cupboards at home? The system, and the same thing was like, why do we sell junk food? Why do we sell junk food? It's not like the CEO of Coca-Cola is sitting around thinking, how can I add to the childhood obesity epidemic? They're thinking, how can I satisfy my stockholders in the quarterly, and how do you do that? Dirt cheap ingredients, right, which is subsidized by taxpayers, sell for a couple bucks a bottle. It's like pure profit. Whereas produce, right, the healthiest foods, goes bad. It spoils. It's like the worst thing to sell, right? It's not a branded product. Even a broccoli grower is not going to put an ad on TV for broccoli because you just buy your competitor's broccoli. Like, there's just, the whole system is set up. You want a snack cake that sits on the shelves for a few weeks. Now that's how you make money. Yeah. And so it's not like there's this like conspiracy to make people sick. It's just there's a conspiracy to make people money. The system is to make people money. And unfortunately, what's most profitable happens to be what's least healthy.
Yeah.
And same thing in the medical field. All right. I mean, the most profitable thing as a primary care physician is what's called a blood pressure check. It's actually the most common primary care appointment. Is someone has high blood pressure, on blood pressure medications. You come in, check your blood pressure, we tweak your meds. Right. Simplest thing. Doctor can do it in their sleep. Right. Easily billable. Right. The drug company's happy. Everybody's happy, right? I mean, it just makes money for everybody.
It's a big profit margin. The insurance company reimburses it.
Everybody. I mean, it's like all, but, and so to come and say, well, no, wait a second. You don't have to be on these medications because you can get rid of the disease, dramatically decrease your, risk of these endpoints. But it's just, there's no hooks there's no profit motive driving that end. And so all we have is the science. All we have is the information to be able to inform people. And it's just going up against these, really powerful industries.
Right, but people are listening because they're reading your books and you see people making changes.
Yeah,
it's just
amazing.
It's just going against a system that blocks it.
Right, but I mean, that's what keeps me going is how many people who, if they knew it, would change. I mean, there are some people, a lot of people, it takes a lot of different, like the 10th time they hear about something, they start looking into it. But there are people who once they know, the next day, that's it. They're done, right? And how many people are there out there? And they just haven't heard, right? I mean, until everyone, that's when I retire. When I retire, it's not when everyone's eating healthy. Everybody's just informed, right, of the risks and benefits. They know, and then they make their own decision. Look, make whatever decision you want. But the fact that, the food industry is trying to confuse people, right? Intentionally trying to muddy the waters, and you get all these conflicting messages. That's what I can't stand. I'm like, once you know the science, then make up your own mind.
So the food companies are playing a little fun and games with the this and the that, and the bacon is good, and the diet foods that have the sugar in it. So you're coming up against that. All right, let's talk about the movie Game Changers.
Yeah.
You were scientific advisor to that.
Amazing.
I'm guessing that is an attempt to put out some ideas and messages in visual form to kind of counteract everything that's happening from the food company.
Tell me you've seen the movie.
I saw it. I saw a screener this week.
Okay.
Yeah, because James Wilkes was going to be here. And so, yeah, I saw the movie.
As far as I'm concerned, it is the single best piece of film ever put out by the plant-based movement. I mean, so basically, it has. There's lots of resources
More so than
out
What
there.
the Health and
There's
Cowspiracy.
That all has the information. Or Forks Over Knives. It has the information. It has the stories, the amazing life-changing stories. But what was lacking was that polished Hollywood production value, right? Take that amazing, all the science, the amazing stories, and then, put it in like and have enough money to really make a real documentary of it. I mean, not to put any of those others down, but people love those documentaries, not because they're great documentaries, but because of the information. But imagine if you had the information plus a really slick, well-produced, it's like the best of both worlds.
All right, so you're dealing with someone's kind of base level of brain, so they can just see the pictures and say, okay, I'm going to go to this.
It's gorgeous.
And so how were you involved as scientific advisor?
Yeah. Well, so I originally, I was just called to be part of the film. She was being interviewed for the film. And I remember being with, James Wilk, who's like in some little like seedy hotel with him, like the little camcorder on a tripod somewhere. And it was like highway noise outside, whatever, but we were trying to get something. This is when he was just like shoestring budget, blah, blah, blah.
Years and years ago.
So, we did a couple hours, and then he comes back. He comes back to me. I haven't heard from him in a while. Comes back. He says, now we finally got some funding for the thing. We need to reshoot all the footage. I feel bad that we went to it, but I really want to get you in the film, right? Okay. So we go back. We do the whole thing again, right? Research, hours of, okay, but we get it all down. Okay. Then, I know it's like another year goes by. Then it comes, okay, now we really have money. Then we got these fancy high-def cameras. We got,
James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, okay. So we did it again. We do the whole other thing, a whole nother afternoon of film, and go through with the entire crew now and all the lighting, and then I get cut completely from the film. No, but I am 100% in favor. I wouldn't replace a frame of that movie with me or anybody else. It was just done perfectly. But
I would have rather seen you in that.
But the role that I was able to play is just to go through and make sure all the science is set.
Okay.
And so, that was very important to me. Because what so often happens is if there's one little tidbit of the movie that is in the slightest bit misleading, they'll take that and baby out with the bathwater. I mean, that's all they need is one thing to attack. And so my constant refrain was, we want to take, so if you have like 5 statistic, for example, on how much water does a pound of beef cost, make to make. And you could get like the USDA number, you could get like the environmental Greenpeace number, or, the industry has their way skewed in the other direction. What statistics should we take? Well, we take the industry. We go bend over backwards to take the most conservative possible statistics, because then we are just untouchable, right? The science is so strong. I mean, by taking the weaker statistic or the biased statistic, you're almost saying like, yeah, the evidence is so weak, we have to exaggerate. No, it's so strong, we can under-exaggerate. We can go the opposite direction and still just have this overwhelming. So, I mean, that was my constant push. Let's just absolutely use the most conservative, and just trying to keep it, and everything cited to the teeth. I mean, that was just super important to me, because I knew how, as the movie evolved, I knew what an important tool it was going to be, and I did not want it to be dismissed over some, some carelessness.
Okay. Have you been hanging out with James Cameron?
Oh my God, no! But I've talked to Susie, his wife,
and they're really big into the plant-based movement.
Oh, super sweet folks. Yeah.
And it's
really from a more of an environmental standpoint. I'm seeing that a lot on college campuses these days.
Okay.
Is people are telling me they're going for the environment. Like that's totally new to me.
Very plant-based for the environment. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Plant-based for the environment.
Yeah. Look, I saw the movie. It was very beautiful.
Yeah.
The only problem I had is I felt that sometimes they were rolling out these beautiful athletes and showing them on screen when I didn't think they necessarily represented the top athletes in the world. That's what I didn't. So there's a strongman on there, but he's not one of the world's strongest men. And there were some Olympic athletes on there, but they weren't the top athletes. And so for me, I was like, okay, you can find some correlation, but I don't see the causation. That's what I didn't like. And I thought some of the science stuff was a little gimmicky, and the erection stuff, I thought that was a little gimmicky.
Oh my God, that was awesome. That was totally my idea. That
Really?
was my idea to do that.
That makes sense.
Oh my God, that was
That makes
brilliant.
sense.
Okay. So the all you need to do, I mean, the current culture as now is you need meat for protein. How could you possibly build muscle without? So to counter the culture, all you need is a single example of one person anywhere building any amount of muscle, and then you can't build muscle without meat. Is right. I mean, that's what you need. We are so far on one end.
I guess so.
All you have to do is like, wait a second. Can you have any endurance? Can you have any strength? That's all we need to do.
So
and I think it showed it beautifully.
Appeal to the lowest common denominator.
But that's
it is.
Have you been out on the streets?
Yeah, maybe
Are
you're
these
right.
people in life? I mean,
I live in London. That's my problem.
I mean, no, but look, I talk to people on flights all the time. I'm stuck on a 7-hour flight, and I strike up a conversation. It's like people are clueless. I mean, just these real, they don't know anything about nutrition. And that's the way the industry likes it. Wants people confused, so they throw up their hands and eat whatever's put in front of them. That's the way the system is set up. So, I mean, that's all we need. That's all this movie had to show. You could do it. Right? It is possible to not drop over dead by not eating these foods. And then, the erection study, which I will take full credit for.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's actually being done now in a real setting.
And it
didn't purport that there's some, but just to show how dramatic, one meal. Right, that's wild. Come on, and it shows to the arterial function. Right, it's not that they're clearing out their plaque, but just shows your arteries function better.
And it plays to the lowest common denominator of someone's manhood. Come on, Michael, you're better than that.
What do men care about? Right? No, especially young men. Look, when I go speak at a high school, right? Yeah. Breast cancer is going to go over their head. I'm going to talk about stroke, dying of a heart disease. That's what grandparents like. Okay, so I talk about athletic performance. I talk about acne. I talk about, about things talk about erections. That's what young men care about.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Okay. I get it.
All right.
I get it. Look, What you got to do it. I get it. You know, that's fine. The blood and the plasma's cloudy. I was just like, my scientific mind was like, all right, one looks cloudy, doesn't look cloudy.
Your blood is a milkshake after drinking, after eating
Where's
a
the science,
cheeseburger.
though? I'm looking at it, so I got these unscientific guys that say it looks cloudy. I mean, does that?
But
mean...
it is. There's actually something called lactescence.
Okay.
And so that's the cloudiness or the milkiness of your serum.
Okay.
That's what happens after you eat a meal.
Does
That's
that
how much
mean-
fat is in your. And the consequences of that fat are the insulin resistance and arterial crippling and all these downturn. So we're just trying, but otherwise, it's numbers on a screen. It's numbers in a graph, right? How can we take numbers in a graph and actually make some kind of visual impact of it? That was
I get it, but I would
and
say
you can do it yourself.
But there were no
spin down your blood after a cheeseburger,
maybe
and you're
I
like,
will, and I'll
what?
look at it. Yeah, I mean, okay, whatever. All right, but also, I mean, there weren't that many top athletes in there. There's not the top of their games. There were just a few select choices.
Well, maybe.
You took a runner that looked good.
Maybe
God
they
bless her.
should
You look a
try-
strong man who's
maybe
not at the top
they
of the
should
strongman game.
Maybe these athletes.
Maybe. But you know what I'm
seeing
saying.
this would.
You took one mixed martial arts fight between a vegan and a meat eater, and he happened to lose.
Maybe so all we need to do, open up their mind and have people try it. And then, so why are people eating the way they are? They're eating the way they are because they were taught this is what you eat to be strong. This is what you eat to be fast. This is what you eat for endurance, right?
Yeah.
And so just to open their mind, say, wait a second, you can eat this, and still be at the top of your game. Well, maybe I'll give it a try. And so,
in that sense, cool. I get it. Thank you for explaining it to me because I was having a few issues, and I respect you a lot, and I respect what you guys are doing. And look, I went plant-based for a year. I ran a goddamn Ironman triathlon plant-based. So like maybe you're preaching to the choir a little bit, and I was looking for something else. So I get why you're doing it. A lot of great minds, and it's good to have that question in people's minds. So I'll give you that. I'll give you the pass. I know it's going to blow up on Netflix. I know it's already blowing up on iTunes.
It's going to go crazy.
So congrats. I would have rather seen you in that movie.
Oh my God. Well, maybe I'll be in some
goofball
DVD extra or something. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, that'd be good. Can I tell you about my experience on plant-based last year? And then I want to get into the book a little bit more.
Okay,
So last year, I had someone sitting in that leather chair. His name was John Joseph. He's the lead singer of the hardcore punk band, the Cro-Mags. Been plant-based for 30-some years.
Amazing.
Because he was a Hare Krishna monk back in the day. And he's also done 10 of these Ironman races, which are these really long distance,
Insane.
12, 13-hour races where you swim and you bike and you run. And so he got in the chair and he was looking at me funny and he said, Brian, I want to challenge you to do a half Ironman. You got 90 days to train. And I was like, you must be crazy because I had never done endurance training. I mean, I was in okay shape, but I had never done long distance swim or run or anything. And I said, okay, maybe. And then he said, but you're doing it on a plant-based diet. And I was like, what are you doing, John? There's a scene in the movie where he walks in my Airbnb in New York and I'm cooking eggs and bacon and he throws it in the trash and he takes me across the street and I'm drinking smoothies. And he said, Brian, you're going to not get injured. You're going to be a better performance. And I'm 47 years old at the same time. And I didn't believe him, but I like John a lot. And, he really knows his science. He has a great book called Meat is for Pussies, which again, really kind of addressed this whole, I got to eat meat as men. Yeah. And I appreciated him writing that book and getting in trouble for the title and all that stuff. Although apparently the publisher was their idea. Anyways, so I started eating plants. I told my wife, she freaked out. She's originally from Bulgaria where, she didn't know anything about plant-based diets. But she adopted and adapted, and all of a sudden she's making black bean quinoa nachos with vegan cheese, and we're rocking and rolling. And I had to I first wasn't eating enough, so I was a little bit calorie deficit. But once I figured that out, I had a great experience. I ran the race, and I felt so good that I kept it up for the whole year. So a year I went plant-based. And towards the end of the year, I just asked myself this, Michael. I said, am I doing this because I'm dogmatic, or am I doing this because this feels like the best nutrition? And I have a history of doing things because I'm dogmatic, or doing things until they kill me. Drinking, drugs, being a banker. So it's true. So I thought, why am I doing this? And I introduced some fish back into my diet and some grass-fed beef. And I just thought, you know what? I just don't know if it's the right nutrition source for me. Now, I am not doing a lot of that. I still eat a lot of plants, and I'm not eating cheeseburgers all the time.
Right.
But for me, I feel good with this diet. And I've had a lot of people that have been vegan here for 5 years that are actually now starting to experiment with some animal protein. So what do you think about that?
Well, it sounds like you're eating better than 99.9% of people out there, right? So that's fantastic.
You're probably right.
If there was one thing, if you were going to obsessively commit to one thing in your life, rather than alcoholism. I mean, a healthy diet. The number one cause of
I have
death.
a healthy diet. I'm just not 100% plant-based.
Right. Okay. But you could eat a healthier diet, right? And we could all eat a healthier diet, right? Every time, it's a zero-sum game. Every time we put something in our mouth, there's an opportunity cost. There's a lost opportunity to put something even healthier in your mouth. And this goes for anything, right? You eat a banana, you just had a lost opportunity to eat blueberries, which are healthier than a banana, right? So you just put one thing on oatmeal or another thing on your oatmeal.
Right.
And so that's like, when you say is X food healthy or not? Is grass-fed beef healthy? Compared to what? Compared to bacon? Absolutely, right? Compared to chickpeas? Nah, that'd be hard, right? But so everything we eat we should just all try to nudge everything up. And if eating a little bit of animal protein is going to keep you eating all the other wonderful food in your diet, right? I mean, if just that psychologically, right, saying, well, I don't want to be one of them, right? And
it's not necessarily that.
Or look, I don't want to worry about holidays or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If that on a day-to-day basis keeps you, stuffing your face with all those healthy whole plant foods, it's not what you eat today or tomorrow or birthdays, holidays, special occasions. It's what you eat today for like decades from now. What are you going to be in decades? So whatever makes it sustainable for you is the healthiest diet. Okay. So if that includes beef, and if otherwise you would just forget about it, right? So people who go all in, these people do the cold tofu kind of thing and all in, and they're like, wow, I feel so good about myself. But then 6 months later, they're back eating cheeseburgers. Well, then maybe if they would have went slower and figured out how to make it work within their lives, make it convenient, and then maybe they would have been doing this. So the 6 months aren't going to help them in the long run, right? So it's really about how knowing your psychology and what's going to keep me in this for the long run, eating as many whole plant foods as possible. And that's really the crux. It's how many whole plant foods are you eating? That if there was one question. And so it's not how much meat are you eating?
Right.
How many whole plant foods? Now, if you eat meat, you're kind of displacing, right? There's a certain number of calories and satiety that goes along with that. And so you may end up at the end of the day eating less full. But in terms of health, it's how many whole plant foods you're eating, full stop. And the primary reason these other foods aren't good is because they may undercut your whole plant food consumption, in addition to whatever else they have bad in them. So yes, some have saturated fat or trans fats or too much sodium or cholesterol. But part of the reason that they're unhealthful comparatively is because it's that bite for bite. It's that substituting one for another. And so if you're going to eat meat, make it the best meat. Right? You're going to eat cheese, make it the expensive, really high-end cheese. It's people who are eating Velveeta and American cheese and they're just they don't even taste it. They're watching TV, eating Kentucky Fried Chicken or something. It's you're not even enjoying, you're hurting yourself. If you're going to hurt yourself, right? Then you might as well, right, have the best scotch or whatever, right? Then, but that's the worst of both worlds. It's you're not even deriving any pleasure from it, right? So look, if you're going to eat chocolate, eat some really good chocolate. And then it's going to be expensive. And so you're not going to get a lot of it. And it's going to be a special occasion. And it's going to be, and your body can bounce back from intermittent insults. It's kind of the day-to-day stuff that really builds up.
Okay. Now, if I go out and shoot an elk and eat some wild elk, and that's a whole nother thing that you can get mad at me about, but are you definitively saying that is going to hurt me, having that meat, as opposed to having a whole food?
That's absolutely the healthiest. So elk and moose, 2% fat by weight. 2% fat. When you go to the store and it says extra lean, that's 28% fat. That's the extra lean, right? Okay. 2%. So so that's actually what chicken used to be in 1896. 2%. Now it's 23%, 10 times more fat. Really? But yeah. So wild caught game without lead ammunition. That's critically important. If you shoot that elk with lead ammunition, it's a bad thing. But so copper jacketed, no lead. But yeah, venison. And so there's actually experiments done. Primarily there's a research team in Australia where they did compared eating wild meat, which is kangaroo there, but that's their venison.
Right.
Compared to conventional store-bought meat, it's a significantly lower bump in postprandial inflammation after eating, significantly less inflammation in their blood within 4 hours after eating the kangaroo meat compared to conventionally bought meat. Now, you could argue, why eat anything pro-inflammatory at all? If you instead ate plant foods, you actually would have an anti-inflammatory reaction. Okay, fine. But if you're going to eat meat, that's absolutely the least harmful meat is the wild-caught meat.
Okay, fair enough.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.